Jessamine didn't know the man standing at the edge of the market square was the Alpha King. She didn't know he'd spent 5 years turning over every stone in 3 kingdoms, burning through fortunes and favors, all to find the woman who'd vanished from his bed without a word. And she definitely didn't know that the twin girls clutching her skirt, laughing at a puppet show with his silver gray eyes, were about to shatter the fragile world she'd built on secrets and silence. All she knew was that the autumn wind carried the scent of rain, and she needed to get her daughters home before the storm broke. Millbrook was the kind of village that existed on no official map, nestled between 2 mountain ridges, accessible only by a single winding road that flooded every spring. It was the perfect place to disappear. And disappearing was exactly what Jessamine had needed 5 years ago when she'd fled Valdres with nothing but the clothes on her back and a secret growing inside her. Now she stood in the market square haggling over the price of winter onions while Briar and Calla played thrift stalls down. The puppet show had drawn a small crowd of children, and her daughters sat cross-legged in the dirt, utterly transfixed. Briar, the elder by 4 minutes, watched with analytical intensity. She'd want to know how the puppets worked, would ask questions all the way home. Calla, meanwhile, laughed at every joke, clapping her hands with pure joy, feeling everything so deeply it sometimes frightened Jessamine. They were so different, her girls. And yet, when they turned to look at her in unison, the same pale gray eyes catching the afternoon light, Jessamine's heart stuttered the way it always did. His eyes. She tried to convince herself otherwise in those early months, tried to see her own brown eyes reflected back, her own softer features, but the truth stared at her twice daily. Undeniable, the sharp cheekbones beginning to emerge from childhood roundness. The stubborn set of their jaws, the way Briar commanded a room without speaking, the way Calla's rare anger flashed like lightning, Thuron's daughters in everything but name. Jessamine paid for the onions quickly, suddenly eager to leave. The market felt too open today, too exposed. The feeling had been growing for weeks now, a prickle at the back of her neck, the sense of being watched. She'd learned to trust that instinct. It had kept her alive this long. Briar, Calla, she called, keeping her voice light. Time to go, little wolves. The girls protested, of course. The puppet show wasn't finished, and the villain hadn't been defeated yet. And please, Mama, just 5 more minutes. Jessamine was negotiating, 3 more minutes, not 5, when the crowd shifted. She felt him before she saw him, a presence that made the air heavier. That silenced conversation and drew every eye. The puppet master's hands faltered. A merchant dropped a display of copper pots. Even the children went quiet, sensing something their young minds couldn't name. Jessamine's blood turned to ice. No, she didn't turn around. Didn't need to. She knew that presence like she knew her own heartbeat. Had Snort spent 5 years trying to forget how it felt to stand in its orbit, to be consumed by it? Take the children and run. A voice in her head screamed, but her legs wouldn't move. And running had never truly been an option, had it? She'd always known this day would come, had nightmares about it. Had planned for it dozens of times, only to abandon each plan as hopeless. You didn't run from the Alpha King of Valdres, you simply waited for him to find you. Mama? Briar's voice confused. Mama, why is everyone so quiet? Jessamine forced herself to turn, placing her body between her daughters and the man walking toward her. 5 years had changed him. The boyish edges she remembered had hardened into something fiercer. His dark hair was longer, pulled back from a face that looked carved from stone. A scar she didn't recognize cut through his left eyebrow, and the shadows beneath his eyes spoke of sleepless nights beyond counting. But those eyes, steel-colored and piercing, were exactly as she remembered. And right now, they burned with something between fury and devastation as they locked onto hers. Thuron stopped 3 ft away, close enough that she could see the muscle jumping in his jaw. Close enough that his scent, pine and wood smoke and something wild, wrapped around her like a ghost. Jessamine, her name in his voice rough, shattered, a wound-given sound. She lifted her chin, meeting his gaze even as her heart threatened to crack her ribs. Your Majesty. The formality landed like a slap. She watched him flinch, watched rage flicker across his features before his composure slammed down. 5 years, his voice was dangerously soft. 5 years I've searched. 5 years he stopped. His eyes had moved past her, dropped to the 2 small faces peering around her skirt. Time suspended. Jessamine watched Thuron's face transform. Confusion first, then disbelief, then something that looked like the ground crumbling beneath his feet. Briar stepped forward, fearless as always. Mama, who is this man? Why does he smell like? She paused, her small nose wrinkling. Like something familiar. Like the feeling I get when I'm supposed to remember a dream but can't. Jessamine's throat tightened. She taught the girls about pack bonds, about the instincts that hummed in their blood. Snorts, but she'd never expected Briar to recognize the pull so young. Calla gripped Jessamine's skirt tighter, but her gray eyes, his gray eyes, studied Thuron with unsettling intensity. Snorts, the Alpha King of Valdris, conqueror of the Northern Territories, the man whose name made grown warriors tremble, stood frozen in a muddy market square, staring at two girls just past their 4th birthday, who wore his face like a mirror. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. Jessamine, her name again but different now. Broken in a new way. What have you done? Before we continue, please take a moment to like this video. The walk back to Jessamine's cottage was silent, heavy. The kind of silence that pressed against the skull and made breathing difficult. Thuron followed 3 paces behind. His guards, 4 of them she'd counted, forming a loose perimeter. The villagers of Millbrook watched from doorways and windows, their faces tight with fear. They'd never seen warriors like this, had never felt the weight of true power walking their muddy streets. Briar kept looking over her shoulder at the strange man. Calla hadn't released Jessamine's hand since they'd left the square, her small fingers gripping with desperate strength. The cottage was modest. 2 rooms, a kitchen garden, a chicken coop out back. Jessamine had built most of it herself in those first desperate months when her belly was swelling and her options were non-existent. It wasn't much, but it was hers. It was theirs. She wondered if she'd ever see it again after today. "Girls," she said, her voice steady through sheer force of will. "Go to your room and play. Mama needs to talk to the visitor." "But Mama," Briar started. "Now, little wolf." Something in her tone brooked no argument. Briar took Calla's hand and led her sister through the curtain that separated their small sleeping space. Jessamine waited until she heard the familiar sounds of their wooden animal toys before she turned. Taryn stood in the center of her kitchen, too large for this space, too much for this simple life she'd carved out. His eyes moved across the room, the herbs drying from the rafters, the patched curtains, and the single pair of worn boots by the door, taking inventory of everything she'd become. "Why?" the word tore from him. "Jessamine. Why?" She moved to the opposite side of the table, kneaded the barrier between them. "You know why. I know nothing." His palm slammed against the wood, making her flinch. "I woke up and you were gone. No note, no explanation, no trail. I thought you were dead. I mourned you." The rawness in his voice cut deeper than any blade. "It was safer that way." "Safer?" He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Safer for whom? For me? Spending 3 years convinced your body was rotting in some unmarked grave? For my wolf, howling every night for a mate who'd vanished?" For his voice cracked. "For the daughters I didn't know existed." Jessamine closed her eyes. She'd imagined this conversation 1,000 times. Had rehearsed her explanations until they were smooth as river stones. But now, facing him, watching the devastation she'd caused written across his face, every word dissolved. "Valeria," she finally said. The name landed like poison. Thuron went still. "What about my stepmother? She came to me the night before I left." Jessamine's hands trembled, so she pressed them flat against the table. "Told me she knew about us, about the pregnancy. I'd only just realized myself. Hadn't even told you yet. She said if I didn't disappear, she'd make sure neither I nor the child survived to see the winter. That's impossible. Valeria would never." She showed me the poison, Thuron. Jessamine's voice hardened, described exactly how she'd administer it. Slowly, so it would look like a pregnancy gone wrong. Said she'd done it before. To your father's mistress. To the woman before me. The blood drained from Thuron's face. "She told me the only way my child would live was if I vanished so completely that even you couldn't find me. If I stayed, if I told you, she'd know. She had spies everywhere. Everywhere, Thuron. I couldn't risk it. I couldn't risk them." She gestured toward the curtain, toward the 2 girls who were the axis of her entire world. Silence stretched between them. When Thuron spoke again, his voice was hollow. "You should have told me." "When? How?" She watched every move I made, read every letter. "I had one chance to run and I took it." Tears burned behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "I chose our children over you. I chose their lives over your peace of mind. And I would make the same choice again. Our children." He repeated the words like they were foreign, like he was still trying to make them real. "Twins, Briar and Calla, Briar and Calla," he echoed softly. His hand rose to his chest, pressing against his heart. "I have daughters. You have daughters who don't know you exist. Who think their father was a traveling merchant who died before they were born." Jessamine's voice wavered despite her efforts. "I've kept the truth from them every day of their lives to keep them safe. Don't you dare judge me for it. I'm not judging you." Thuron looked at her with eyes that held too many emotions to name. "I'm trying to understand how I lived 5 years without knowing half my soul was out here, how I didn't feel them." "You felt something. That's why you never stopped searching." "No." He moved around the table slowly, giving her time to retreat. "She didn't. I never stopped searching because I never stopped loving you. Because my wolf never accepted that you were gone. Because the mate bond between us never faded, not even for a moment. Every morning I woke up reaching for you, and every night I fell asleep with your name on my lips." He stopped an arm's length away, close enough that his warmth reached her. Close enough that her traitorous body remembered everything she'd tried to forget. "I hate you for leaving," he whispered. "And I understand why you did. And I love you still despite all of it." "Do you have any idea how maddening that is?" Jessamine's breath caught. Thuron, she's dead. The word stopped her cold. What? Valeria, she's dead. His jaw tightened. 18 months ago I found evidence of her treachery. Not about you, about other things. A plot against me, embezzlement, murder. His voice darkened. When I confronted her, she tried to poison me too. My guard took the cup instead. He survived. She didn't survive what I did next. Jessamyn's knees buckled. She gripped the table to stay upright. Dead. Valeria was dead. The monster under the bed, the shadow that had haunted her every moment for 5 years, was gone. You're safe now, Thuron said. You and the girls. Whatever threat drove you away, it's gone. You can come home. Home. As if it were that simple. As if she could just pack up her life and return to a world she'd fled in terror. This is my home now, she said weakly. This is a hiding place. His hand reached out, hovering near her cheek but not quite touching. There's a difference. From behind the curtain, small voices argued about whose turn it was with the wooden horse. Their daughters. The weight of what came next pressed down on Jessamyn like a physical force. I'm not going back to Valders. Jessamyn said the words firmly, but even she could hear the uncertainty beneath them. Thuron simply watched her, that infuriating patience he'd always possessed when he knew he'd already won. I'm not asking you to, he said. Not yet. Then what are you asking? Time. He leaned against the table, and she hated how natural he looked in her small kitchen, how his presence seemed to fill the gaps she'd pretended didn't exist. A chance to know my daughters, to prove that the threat is truly gone, he paused, vulnerability flickering across his features. To remember what we were to each other. What we were is over. Is it? He tilted his head, studying her the way he always had, like she was a puzzle he'd never tire of solving. Then why is your heart racing right now? Why does the bond between us still pull like it did the very first day? Don't use the bond against me. I'm not using anything. I'm stating facts. He straightened, giving her space. I've taken rooms at the inn. My guards will patrol the village border discreetly. I'm not here to drag you back in chains, Jessamyn. I'm here because for 5 years I've been a ghost haunting the halls of a castle that felt like a tomb. And now I find out I have a family, a real family. Did you think I'd just walk away? I hoped. Liar. But he said it gently, almost affectionately. The curtain rustled and Briar's face appeared. Her silver gaze moved between them with unsettling perception. Mama, Calla wants to know if the man is staying for supper. Jessamyn opened her mouth to say no, to send him away, rebuild her walls, pretend this day hadn't happened. But Thuron dropped to one knee, bringing himself to Briar's eye level. That depends, he said softly. Would you like me to stay? Briar considered him, 4.5 years old and already a strategist. We don't have a pack. Mama says we're lone wolves. Your mama is very brave. Lone wolves have to be. Thuron's voice was impossibly tender. But sometimes lone wolves find their pack again. Sometimes the pack never stops looking for them. A flicker of curiosity crossed Briar's face. A hunger Jessamyn recognized with a mother's ache, the hunger for belonging. Calla wants you to stay, Briar announced. I haven't decided yet. Thuron smiled and Jessamyn watched her daughter's careful defenses waver. That's fair, he said. I'll work to earn your vote. Briar nodded solemnly, then disappeared behind the curtain. When Thuron stood, his eyes were wet. She's magnificent, he breathed. They both are, Jessamyn, you've raised them. His voice caught. You've raised them beautifully. A wall she'd built so carefully loosened by a single brick. Supper, she said stiffly. That's all. Then you leave. Of course. He was lying. She knew he was lying. And the worst part was she wasn't sure she wanted him to tell the truth. Supper was chaos. Jessamyn had planned for a simple meal. Bread, stew, whatever vegetables she could scrape together. But Thuron's guards had arrived before the first pot boiled, carrying supplies from the inn. Roasted meats, honeyed fruits, fresh bread that was still warm. The girl's eyes had gone wide at the spread, and Jessamyn couldn't bring herself to refuse them. Now they sat around her small table, knees bumping in the cramped space. Thuron had removed his cloak, rolled up his sleeves, and was currently learning the hard way that 4-year-olds asked a lot of questions. Why is your hair so long? Do you have a horse? Why do your eyes look like ours? Briar says you're a king. Do you wear a crown? Can I try it? That last one came from Calla, whose initial shyness had melted the moment Thuron the first slice of honey cake. She'd claimed his lap as her seat 20 minutes into the meal, much to Briar's visible disapproval. Jessamyn's snorts watched Thuron navigate the chaos with more grace than she'd expected. He answered every question seriously, complimented Briar's cleverness when she caught him in a half-truth, actually laughed, when Calla smeared honey across his jaw and announced he needed a beard like the puppet man. He looked happy. The realization was dangerous, painful, because she remembered this version of him, the playful prince beneath the cold king, the snorts man who'd made her believe in impossible things. After supper, the girls demanded a story. Before Jessamyn could intervene, Calla had dragged Thuron toward their sleeping space by 2 fingers, and Briar had reluctantly followed. Jessamyn stood in the kitchen listening to Thuron's low voice weaving a tale about a brave wolf princess and her magical sister. listening to her daughter's giggles and gasps, listening snorts to the sounds of a family she'd never let herself imagine. When he emerged an hour later, both girls were asleep. "They're extraordinary," he said softly, pulling the curtain closed. "Briar tries so hard to be strong to protect her sister. And Calla, she feels everything, doesn't she? Everything in the room, she absorbs it. She's sensitive, like her grandmother was." Thuron went still. "Your mother, she had the gift of sensing emotions. It skipped me, but Calla." Jessamine smiled sadly. "She knows when I'm hurting before I do. Does she know about me, what I am to her? No, but she feels something. They both do." Jessamine wrapped her arms around herself. "Briar asked me once why she felt like part of her was missing. I didn't have an answer." The pain that crossed Thuron's face was almost too much to bear. "Jessamine," he stepped closer. "I know I can't undo 5 years. I know there's damage between us that may never heal, but I need you to know something." He stopped just in front of her, close enough that she had to look up to meet his eyes. "I'm not leaving Millbrook without my daughters, and I'm not taking them without you." His hand lifted, brushing a strand of hair from her face with heartbreaking gentleness. "So whatever walls you need to rebuild, whatever time you need to trust me again, I'll wait. I'll earn it. But I'm not walking away from this, from them, from you." The mate bond between them pulsed, that invisible thread she tried so hard to sever, still intact after all these years. Stronger perhaps for having been tested. "You left guards in the village," she whispered. "Why, if Valeria's dead?" "Because Valeria wasn't working alone." Thuron's features hardened. "There's a faction in my court that supported her. Old blood. Old money. They've been quiet since her death, but they haven't surrendered. When they learn I found you, when they learn about the twins," his meaning was clear. "They'll come for us," Jessamine finished. "Yes." Thuron's jaw tightened. "And I will destroy anyone who tries." In the other room, Calla murmured in her sleep, a soft, innocent sound that made everything feel more fragile. Jessamine looked at the man she'd loved, fled, and never forgot. "What have you brought to our door, Thuron?" "War, possibly." His hand fell from her face. "Safety, eventually, and the truth, finally." He moved toward the door, then paused with his hand on the frame. "I meant what I said 5 years ago. The last words I spoke before we fell asleep that night. Do you remember them?" Her throat tightened. Of course she remembered. "You said you'd find me in every lifetime, and I meant it." His voice was rough. 5 years, 500, 5,000, I would never stop looking. Then he was gone, leaving her alone with the echo of a promise that had followed her across mountains and years, and the growing certainty that her quiet life in Millbrook was already over. 3 days passed in fragile peace. Thuron came each morning and stayed until the girls fell asleep each night. He learned that Briar hated carrots, but would eat them if hidden in stew. That Calla sang to herself while playing little melodies she invented on the spot. That both girls had inherited his stubborn streak and Jessamine's quick mind. He learned other things, too. The way Jessamine watched him when she thought he wasn't looking. The way her breath caught when their hands accidentally touched. The way the bond hummed louder each day, demanding acknowledgement. On the 4th morning, Riven arrived. Jessamine heard the horse before she saw it. Thundering hooves that sent chickens scattering and drew Thuron's guards to attention. A rider burst into the village clearing, dust-covered and exhausted. "My king," the man, barely more than a boy with copper hair and frantic eyes, nearly fell from his saddle. "They know. Lord Cresswell intercepted our supply messages. He's traced you to this region." Thuron's face turned to stone. "How long?" 2 days, perhaps less. He's mobilizing the old guard. 50 men, maybe more." Riven swallowed hard. "They're calling it a rescue mission, claiming you've been compromised." Jessamine's blood ran cold. "Compromised?" Thuron repeated softly. The word dripped with danger. "Lord Cresswell says you've been bewitched, that the woman who fled is a sorceress." Who Riven's eyes flicked to Jessamine with obvious discomfort. "Forgive me, my lady, I'm only repeating his claims." "What exactly is Lord Cresswell saying about me?" The young messenger hesitated. "That you ensorcelled the king 5 years ago, that you fled when Lady Valeria discovered your treachery, and that now you've used witchcraft to lure him here, to weaken his mind so the old families can install a more suitable ruler." Silence fell like a blade. Jessamine's mind raced. She'd known Valeria had allies, known the danger wasn't truly over. But this, a coordinated coup disguised as a rescue, was worse than anything she'd imagined. "The girls," she breathed, "if they take the girls, no one is taking my daughters." Thuron turned to her, and the fury in his eyes was almost blinding. "I will burn this kingdom to ash before I let anyone harm them." "Papa," the small voice cut through the tension. Everyone turned. Briar stood in the doorway, Calla clutching her hand. Both girls stared at Thuron with wide eyes. "Papa," Briar repeated, testing the word. Calla said she felt it. "Is it true? Are you our papa?" Jessamine's heart splintered. Thuron dropped to his knees in the dirt. His eyes glistened as he looked at his daughters, truly looked at them for the first time as their father. "Yes," he whispered. "I'm your papa. I've been looking for you for a very long time." Calla broke free from Briar's grip and ran. She crashed into Thuron's chest with the force of a small storm, her arms wrapping around his neck. I knew it, she sobbed. I knew something was missing. Mama said it was just a feeling, but I knew. Thuron held her like she was made of glass. His eyes found Jessamyn's over Callah's shoulder, and the gratitude in them nearly brought her to her knees. Briar stood apart, arms crossed, her small face a war between hope and suspicion. If you're our papa, she said slowly, why weren't you here? Why didn't you find us before? Thuron extended his free arm, an invitation, not a demand. Because I didn't know where to look. Your mama hid you to keep you safe from bad people. Very bad people who wanted to hurt you. She was brave enough to run, and I wasn't smart enough to find you sooner. His voice cracked. But I'm here now, and I will never let anyone hurt you. I swear it on my life. Briar studied him with those piercing eyes like winter frost. Then slowly, she walked forward and let him pull her into the embrace. Jessamyn watched the three of them cling to each other in the morning light and felt a lock opening inside her chest. A door she'd welded shut 5 years ago creaking on its hinges. Then Riven cleared his throat. My king, Cresswell's men, they're coming. Thuron released his daughter slowly, pressing a kiss to each forehead. Then we need to leave. He stood, his hand finding Jessamyn's and gripping tight. All of us tonight? Snorts they rode through the night. Thuron's guards had procured horses with terrifying efficiency, and by moonrise their small party was deep in the forest heading north. Jessamyn rode with Callah pressed against her chest, the girl finally asleep despite the jostling. Briar had insisted on riding with Thuron, her small hands gripping his cloak as she fought to stay awake. They snorts didn't stop until dawn painted the sky pink and orange. The cabin was hidden in a valley between two peaks, invisible unless you knew exactly where to look. A hunting lodge, Thuron explained, built by his grandfather and known only to the royal family. Cresswell doesn't know about this place. Jessamyn asked as Thuron helped her dismount. Cresswell knows what Valyria knew, and Valyria never earned my grandfather's secrets. He lifted Callah from Jessamyn's arms with practiced ease, cradling his sleeping daughter against his shoulder. We're safe here. For now. The cabin was larger than Jessamyn had expected. 4 rooms, a functioning kitchen, a fireplace that Thuron's guards had roaring within minutes. The girls were settled in the smaller bedroom, too exhausted to do more than mumble protests before sleep claimed them. Jessamyn stood in the main room, watching Thuron dismiss his guards to their posts. When they were finally alone, the silence felt heavier. You should sleep, Thuron said. There's a bed in the other room, I'll keep watch. I can't sleep. Jessamyn wrapped her arms around herself. Every time I close my eyes, I see them finding the girls, taking them. I see her voice broke. I see Valyria's face, except now it's Cresswell's, and I'm running again, always running, and it never ends. Jessamyn. Thuron crossed the room in 3 strides. His hands found her shoulders, steadying her. Look at me. She did. His gaze was soft in the firelight. You're not alone anymore. You haven't been alone since the moment I walked into that market square. Whatever comes next, we face it together. Do you understand? You can't promise that. I can. I am. His hand slid up to cup her face. I failed you once. I let Valyria grow powerful under my nose. I didn't see the danger until you were gone. I have carried that guilt every day for 5 years. But I am not the same man I was, Jessamyn. I am sharper now, harder, and I will not fail you again. Thuron. I know you don't trust me yet. I know I have to earn it, but I need you to know something. He leaned closer, his forehead nearly touching hers. These past 3 days with you and the girls, they're the first time I felt alive since you left. The first time I've wanted a future instead of just surviving to the next day. Her breath caught. Don't say things you don't mean. When have I ever said things I didn't mean? Never. That was the answer, and they both knew it. I'm scared, she whispered. Not of Cresswell, not of the old guard. I'm scared of this. Of us. Of letting myself hope and having it destroyed again. I know. His thumb brushed her cheek, wiping away a tear she hadn't realized she'd shed. But Jessamyn, hope is all we have. It's what kept you alive for 5 years. What kept our daughters safe. What kept me searching when everyone told me to stop. His voice dropped. Hope isn't weakness. It's the bravest thing either of us has ever done. She broke. 5 years of walls, of fear, of carefully maintained distance, all of it crumbled. She surged forward, pressing her lips to his with desperate hunger. Thuron made a sound low in his throat and pulled her closer. His kiss was everything she remembered and nothing like it at all. Fiercer, more desperate. The kiss of a man who'd spent 5 years starving and finally found sustenance. When they finally broke apart, both gasping, his hands were tangled in her hair and hers were fisted in his shirt. I never stopped loving you, she confessed against his lips. I tried. Gods, I tried so hard. But every night I dreamed of you. Every time the girls did something that reminded me of you, I ached. I built a life in Millbrook, but it was never whole. Part of me was always missing, I know. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, and the corner of her mouth. Because part of me was missing too. What happens now? Now he pulled back enough to meet her eyes and she saw the future there. Terrifying and beautiful and theirs. Now we fight for what's ours, together. From the bedroom, Callah's sleepy voice drifted out. Mama, Papa. I had a bad dream. They broke apart reluctantly. Thuron's hand found hers, squeezing once. Go, he said, I'll bring warm milk. Jessamine paused at the bedroom door. Thuron, he looked at her. Don't let me go this time. Whatever happens, whatever I say when I'm scared, don't let me go. The smile that crossed his face was like sunrise after endless night. Never again. 2 days of peace. 2 days of breakfasts together. Of watching Thuron learn to braid Cala's hair with clumsy fingers. Of Briar slowly thawing into hesitant smiles. 2 days of stolen moments. Hands brushing while washing dishes. Lingering looks across the room. One breathless kiss stolen while the girls napped. On the 3rd day, everything shattered. Ravon burst through the cabin door just after dawn, blood streaming from a gash on his forehead. They found us. He collapsed against the wall, chest heaving. A scouting party. I took down 3, but 1 escaped. He'll bring the others. Thuron was on his feet before Ravon finished speaking. How many? At least 40. They have professional trackers. They'll be here within hours. Jessamine looked at the bedroom where her daughters still slept. We run, she said immediately. There's a path through Thornwood Pass, a full day's journey with children. Thuron's jaw tightened. But if they're tracking us, we can't outrun them with the girls. The truth hung between them. Riven. Thuron turned to his messenger. Can you ride? I can fight. That's not what I asked. Riven straightened despite his wound. I can ride, my king. Take the northern route, draw them away, buy us time. Thuron, no, Jessamine grabbed his arm. You can't send him to his death. Riven knows these mountains. He'll lead them in circles, then lose them in the caves near Widow's Peak. Thuron's voice was steady. We've done it before. Riven nodded. Protect the little princesses. He was gone before Jessamine could protest further. The next hours were a blur. Packing supplies, saddling horses, waking frightened children with gentle lies about an adventure in the mountains. They were an hour into the pass when Jessamine heard the howl, a war horn echoing off the mountain walls. They've split their forces. Thuron's face was grim. Riven pulled some away, but not enough. How many behind us? 20 at least. He looked at her, then at the girls, then at the narrow path ahead. Jessamine, take the children and ride. Don't stop until you reach the border. What? I'll hold them here. This pass is narrow. 4 men can hold it if they're determined enough. Thuron, if I come with you, they catch us all. His hand cupped her face. This is the only way. I buy you time. You get our daughters to safety. And if you don't come, then you raise them to know I love them, that I loved you, that everything I did was to give them a future. Papa, Cala's voice trembled. You're coming with us, right? Thuron looked at his daughter and his face wrecked Jessamine completely. Papa needs to talk to some people first, little star. But I'll catch up. On my honor, you promise? I promise. Cala nodded. Briar said nothing, but tears streaked silently down her cheeks. Thuron kissed both their foreheads. Then he looked at Jessamine one last time. Go, now, I hate you for this. She choked. I know. He smiled, the saddest thing she'd ever seen. I love you too. Then he rode toward the war horns and Jessamine fled into the mountains with her heart in ruins. She made it 2 miles before she stopped. The girls rode ahead with Sorrel, the fastest guardsman who'd sworn to get them to the border. Jessamine had told them she'd catch up. It was a lie. She couldn't leave him. The sound of fighting reached her before she saw it. Steel on steel, screams, the unmistakable sounds of battle. The pass opened into a clearing. Thuron fought like a demon, his sword a blur of silver. 2 guards were down. The 3rd fought back to back with him. But there were too many and Thuron was bleeding, a gash on his arm, another on his thigh. A man on horseback hung back from the fight, Lord Cresswell, gray-haired, sharp-featured, watching with cold satisfaction. Enough, Cresswell's voice rang out. Take him alive. I want him to watch what comes next. Watch what comes next? He meant to find the girls. A fury unlike anything she'd ever felt ignited inside her. Lord Cresswell, every head turned. Thuron's eyes went wide with horror. Jessamine, no, run, but she walked forward into the clearing. The sorceress herself, Cresswell said with amusement. Come to surrender? I've come to offer you a deal, me for them. I'll confess to everything. The sorcery, the bewitching, I'll give you the victory you need. Jessamine, no. In exchange, she continued. You let them go, let my daughters grow up safe. They're just children. Cresswell considered her. Interesting. But why should I trust you? Because I would do anything to keep them safe, even marry you if that's what it takes. Thuron lunged against his captors. I'll kill you, Cresswell. Tempting, Cresswell mused. He dismounted, walking toward her. But I have a better idea. I'll take your confession, keep your daughters as insurance, and execute the king anyway. His hand shot out, grabbing her throat. Jessamine couldn't breathe. Spots danced in her vision. And then a roar shattered the silence. Not human, not animal, something ancient. Thuron shifted. Where the king had knelt, there was suddenly a massive wolf. Black-furred, silver-eyed, and utterly terrifying. He tore through the soldiers like they were paper. Cresswell's grip loosened in shock. Jessamine stumbled backward. The wolf launched himself at the lord, jaws closing around his sword arm with a sickening crunch. Cresswell screamed. The remaining soldiers fled. Thuron shifted back, naked and bloody, standing over Cresswell's whimpering form. You threaten my mate, he said, his voice barely human. You threatened my children. Please, Cresswell gasped, his body shaking from shock and agony. I'll give you anything. You have nothing I want. Except your confession, Cresswell sang. Every name, every plan, every secret. It all came pouring out through gritted teeth, sweat and blood mingling on his ashen face. When it was done, Thuron dropped him in the dirt. Chain him? He turned to Jessamine. You offered to marry him? I offered to save you. By sacrificing yourself? Yes, because that's what you do for the people you love. His defenses crumbled entirely. He crossed the distance and pulled her into his arms. Never again, he said against her hair. We survive together or not at all. Then stop trying to die for me and we have a deal. He laughed, broken, relieved, and kissed her like the world was ending. The journey to Valdres took a week. They reunited with the girls at the border where Sorel had kept them safe. Calla wept when she saw both parents alive. Briar walked forward and wrapped her arms around Thuron's waist. You came back, she whispered. You promised and you came back. Every time, little wolf, for the rest of my life. The capital had changed in Thuron's absence. Word of Cresswell's conspiracy had spread. Confessions emerged. Loyalties shifted. By the time Thuron walked through the castle gates with his family, half his council had already surrendered. 3 weeks after their arrival, Thuron found Jessamine in the garden. The girls played nearby, their laughter mixing with the fountain sound. You're thinking about Millbrook, Thuron said, sitting beside her. I'm thinking about a lot of things. Tell me. I spent 5 years building a life I thought was permanent and now I'm here, surrounded by servants and guards and politics. It's overwhelming. You don't have to stay. Jessamine looked at him sharply. I mean it, Thuron said. The threat is over. If you want to take the girls and return to Millbrook, I won't stop you. I'll visit when I can. I'll be part of their lives from a distance, but I won't trap you here. You'd let us go? I'd hate every moment, but yes, because your freedom matters more than my happiness. Jessamine stared at him. You're an idiot, she said finally. I'm aware. I mean it. She stood, facing him. I ran once because I didn't have a choice, but now I have one. And you think I'm going to choose a quiet cottage over this? She gestured at the garden, the castle, the life that could be theirs. Over our daughters growing up knowing their father? Over sharing a bed with the most infuriatingly noble man I've ever met. Thuron's face transformed from resignation to hope. Jessamine, I love you. She cut him off. I've loved you since I was 20 years old and you were a prince who looked at me like I mattered. Snorts, I loved you when I ran and I loved you when I hated you for not finding me sooner. She stepped closer, framing his face with her hands. I'm done running, Thuron, I choose this, I choose you. His answer was a kiss that lifted her off her feet. You, Calla's voice rang out, they're being gross. Let them be gross, Briar said. Then quieter, Papa deserves to be happy. He waited a long time. Jessamine's heart swelled. Briar, skeptical, guarded Briar, had finally let herself believe. Marry me, Thuron said. Tonight, tomorrow, I don't care when, she pretended to consider. I suppose I could fit you into my schedule. Gracious of you, I thought so. He kissed her again. Is this really happening? It's really happening. Finally, the bonding ceremony was held under the full moon. Jessamine had expected something grand, but Thuron had understood without her needing to ask. The ceremony was intimate, held in the castle's private garden with only those who mattered most. Briar served as flower girl, scattering petals with military precision. Calla carried the bonding cords, her face solemn with responsibility. And Jessamine walked the moonlit path in deep blue silk toward the man who'd never stopped searching for her. When Thuron's snorts wrapped the bonding cord around their joined wrists, Jessamine felt the mate bond snap fully into place. Not a chain, a bridge connecting them, but leaving room for each to be whole. In every lifetime, Thuron said, his voice rough with emotion, I will find you, choose you, and love you. And I, Jessamine replied, will stop running long enough to let you catch me. Laughter rippled through their small audience. I will trust you, she continued seriously, with my fears and my hopes and our daughters and my heart. And when the storms come, I will face them by your side. The cord tightened, sealing the bond. The celebration lasted until dawn. There was music and dancing and toasts that grew increasingly ridiculous. Calla fell asleep in Thuron's arms and he held her the rest of the night. Briar lasted longer. Eventually, she climbed onto Jessamine's lap and whispered, I'm glad you stopped hiding, Mama. I like having a papa. Then she paused and added, even quieter, I was scared he wouldn't be real, that he'd disappear like the merchant in your stories. But he stayed. He fought for us. Her silver eyes, so like her father's, glistened. That's what papas are supposed to do, isn't it? Jessamine held her daughter close, tears streaming down her face. Yes, little wolf, that's exactly what papas do. Later, much later, after the girls were settled in the nursery, Thuron led Jessamine to their chambers. He undressed Snorts her slowly, reverently. And when they came together, it was deeper than before. The bond hummed between them, amplifying every touch. Afterward, they lay tangled in silk sheets, the first hints of dawn casting amber light across the bed. Tell me something, Thuron murmured. What do you want to know? That night, the last night we were together before you ran, what were you thinking? Jessamine was quiet for a long moment. I was thinking that I'd never been so happy, that I didn't deserve it, that something would destroy it. She turned to look at him. And I was thinking that I'd do anything to protect what we had, even if it meant giving it up. And now I'm thinking that happiness isn't something you deserve, it's something you fight for. She smiled softly. And I'm done giving things up. He pulled her closer, pressing a kiss to her forehead. Thank you, she whispered, for not giving up. For walking into that market square and turning my hiding place into a beginning. I would have searched forever. 100 years. However long it took. I know. That's why I'm thanking you. He kissed her then, slow and sweet. When they finally slept, wrapped around each other, Jessamine dreamed of wild flowers and mountain paths and 2 little girls with silver gray eyes. And for the first time in 5 years, the dreams weren't tinged with fear. Jessamine had hidden for 5 years, convinced that running was the only way to survive. She'd built walls and kept secrets and raised her daughters alone. But shadows fade when light finds them. Thuron had found her, not because he was powerful, but because he'd never stopped hoping. And hope, it turned out, was stronger than fear, stronger than 5 years of silence. She'd poured herself into protecting her children, certain she was alone. She'd forgotten that sometimes the people we run from are the same ones running toward us. And in the end, love doesn't just find a way. Love makes one. Where are you listening from? Let me know in the comments. I read every single one. And if you like to support me, please subscribe. It's free and helps more people hear these stories.